We're also a content and entertainment company, so we use all of our social media channels and all of our various distribution channels to make sure that we're delivering the right content at the right time on the right platform, hopefully to the right fan, so that we can keep engaged with our global fan base at all times. You know, so the NBA is a big property, and we've got fans all over the world, and there's a lot of fans that don't have the ability to watch games live because of time zones or where they're consuming the game. So social media and the highlights that we can deliver on social media really allow us to have sort of a one-on-one dialogue with fans across the globe, and are able to consume the social media when it works for them. And then we work with all of the social partners to sort of continue to make sure that we're optimizing what works for that platform, right? So some of the social media platforms are investing heavily in live sports right now. We're trying to produce live content, so we've pivoted some of our strategies to create live content for the social channels, so that we can make sure that we're sort of optimizing the way that they're seeing their consumers consume content across the channels. So we look at it from a little bit of a different perspective.
So going off of that, I'm sure originally you guys started with like just TV was your first one screen, and maybe your guys' was websites, or, you know, if I'm wrong, a different first screen. How has that evolution from one screens moved forward, and what do you think are the most important ones you're using right now?
Well, I'll jump in there first. For us, the first screen was digital, right? So TV is something that came kind of after the fact for us. Chobani, you know, being only 10 years old, it has really kind of grown up, so to speak, in the digital era. And so that's really how we started getting the word out there about our brand, was through our social media presence, through Twitter, just having a really active presence online. And so this past year, when we celebrated our 10-year anniversary, we'd had TV before, but that's really when we kind of had our first robust TV presence. So we've evolved to more screens, but I think the one thing that is at the forefront of everything for us is our mobile strategy, making certain that everything we do is mobile optimized. That's how small niche brands are making a stake in the marketplace today, is by being on mobile. So that's probably the first thing for us.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the first screen is television, and it still is one of our biggest priorities. We really do value that 2.5-hour window a fan gives us every night of the week for a very long season. But we do spend a lot of efforts in using the multiple screens. Oftentimes, people are consuming on their phone alongside watching. So we have companion fantasy content or something that we'll be serving up on our NBA in-play app, for example. Or we'll use social media as a way to share with fans a lot of the behind-the-scenes content that they might not be able to consume in broadcast. You know, it's interesting. Our fan base is so big, less than 1% of the fans in the world are ever going to actually get to an NBA arena or consume a live game in person. So we use social media and all of the secondary screens as a way to sort of provide them an experience that you wouldn't otherwise experience, whether it's watching the players enter in the tunnels before the game, which is sort of turned into their own little runway these days, or other things like that. And mobile's also become a really big priority for us as well. We're in our third season where we're producing games, mobile optimized games, where it's a tighter shot on the players, it's a tighter shot on the gameplay on the court, so that you can better consume it in mobile, on your phone, and even in a vertical format.
And for us, I think we definitely started out actually very traditionally. So even outside of TV and out of home and kind of in the mall presence, building it on the ground. What's happened with the digital revolution is we started building content on our websites, and then we saw the engagement on the content just wasn't there. People really wanted to come to the website to shop. They didn't want to learn as much about the brand. So what's happened is social has become our way to communicate what our brand does and to share with our consumers all of the different behind the scenes, we'll talk about this a little later, all of the things that are happening with our campaigns and with our products, So this is more of an informative and learning tool rather than what used to happen on the website, which is they'd come, they'd shop, and they'd leave, and they'd never actually get to experience the brand as a whole. It actually allows us to introduce them to new products, and that's really what we use social for, and to engage with them. Because this is the closest we're gonna get to our consumer on a mass scale, so it allows us to really take them and then converse with them, share with them, interact with them. That's really, for us, how we see our digital strategy evolving.
Can you guys go into detail of which of the accounts you're actually using? Are they Instagram, Facebook, that we were all on the same page when we're talking about social?
So we use primarily Facebook and Instagram. We use Snapchat really from a paid perspective because it's much easier to reach your consumer from a paid perspective on Snapchat. And we started integrating Pinterest, but really the engagement happens on Instagram and Facebook for us.
We're on all platforms. we're everywhere. I mean, but from a brand integration standpoint, which is where I work, we're finding a lot of success on Instagram, and particularly Instagram stories have seen a lot of engagement with our content and with our partner content that we're producing together with them.
We're primarily on Facebook and Instagram. We leverage stories a lot. Our consumers are really interested in video, so anywhere that we can post video to kind of show life stages or how-tos on recipes and something like that. So pretty much Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, excellent. So when we talk about these things, you've mentioned that people are really loving the video content and the live, even behind the scenes work. How are you measuring the success? I know you're not like directly monitoring the social media, but what is continuing to make these, optimal ways for you to get your brand out there?
Well, for us, really, it's how much they're clicking through and where they're going to. So one of the things that's very challenging for us is to actually measure attribution to in-store. So we just want to really try to keep track of how long they're staying with us on the platform, how many times they're coming back, what they're clicking through to, is what we're measuring and benchmarking.
So for us, we measure engagement and then we measure conversion. So the number one thing is we started layering our content and also our paid social to break it out into sectors. So we start with conversion and then we start with consideration, which is more awareness level and engagement type of metrics, and then we're moving into conversion because we find that the more engaged they are, they actually will end up moving over to the website to purchase, and that's really, for us, the end-all, be-all is purchase, whether it's online or in store. We are working, and this is available on Facebook, is finding an attribution model for when they're coming in store off of the social channels. So that's kind of the next big project in this measurement, I would say, of how we're using our social media.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of in the same vein. I mean, our social media and all of our content is primarily an entertainment vehicle for our fans, and so we're looking at what videos are being consumed, how many comments, likes, shares, interactions we're getting with a piece of content. But we also run a business as well, and so we're looking to use social media to drive League Pass subscriptions, which is our out-of-market live game package, or sell merchandise on behalf of our jersey partner and our apparel partner Nike. So we'll use social media to sort of drive specific actions alongside just general entertainment and fan consumption. And when we look at the entertainment and fan consumption piece of it, that's where my team and I spend a lot of time working with our partners to try and build sort of a branded content series across our channels that sort of has a brand intersection with one of our partner brands. So like attributes that they have with like attributes of our game, and then we'll have sort of a branded content highlight series that we'll share out on all of our channels, and we'll view that as a successful campaign if it gets, 30 million views over the course of the season, or whatever that number happens to be as a KPI for that partner.
Great, so I know we've talked a lot so far about behind the scenes marketing that's becoming really popular. There's a huge trend in that right now where people are wanting less perfectly curated items on their feeds, but you guys are all huge companies, so how do you fit those in with all of the scheduled posts? Like, in basketball, for instance, if somebody does something great in a game, how is that then slipped in to the posting strategy versus everything that's already lined up and scheduled to go?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, for us, behind the scenes has kind of become as much of the scene as the action on the court, just specifically based on who our players are and the fashion icons that they've somehow become. So that's one sort of almost scheduled part of our game, I guess, flow, for lack of a better word. But we are a live sport, right? So we have to be prepared for some of the most iconic plays in sports happening, and then wanting to share them out as quickly as possible. And one of our partners as an example of this is we work with Tissot, who is a watch company, but they also run our shot clocks. And so one of the most iconic plays in sports is the buzzer beater. So we sort of developed a branded content series with Tissot called the Tissot Buzzer Beater, and every time that there's a buzzer beater that, 10 to 15 times a season, we'll clip that piece of content and share it immediately across all of our channels with Tissot brand attribution. So it's almost like we're planning for the unplanned moment so that we can make sure that everyone can be as excited about that play as we are and as Tissot is.
We get to be a little bit more controlled about our content because we don't have live sports, so it actually works to our benefit when we're shooting campaigns. What we'll do is we'll pre-shoot behind the scenes actions that are happening that we can then share as part of a sneak peek into what was happening. We always leave some room within our social calendar to be nimble, and if things are topical or things make sense or there's an interesting thing happening, that we can slot it in, or if there was an influencer or celebrity who wore our pieces that we want to make sure that our consumers see, we move things around. So I think it's also important to be flexible. You should have a content calendar, you should stick to it, but flexibility is super important to being topical and reactive in the market.
Yeah, we're probably very similar in what you're doing, that we're very structured in the conversation that we're having, making certain that we're staying on topic and reaching the right consumer at the right time. But we do, take a vested interest in the communities within which we work and where our products are sold. So as things are topical, we will slip that into the dialogue and be very active in our communication on Twitter with it.
As far as sponsored posts, branding, and influencers, is that across all platforms, or how do you guys incorporate those types of relationships into your marketing?
So we like to use our influencers mostly on Instagram. We find that they're actually much more well received, and that's really the platform where they shine and actually where they end up driving engagement and sales. On Facebook, we find that it's much more curated, and then people who are engaging with content on Facebook, it's usually video. We've talked a lot about that. So when we talk about paid, there has to be a delineation of what's working well on each platform, and it might not be the same for all brands, but understanding for your brand what's really driving your benchmarks is important, and then adapting those tactics to each platform is also important.
I mean, I sort of talked about this earlier, but yeah, I mean, so we do use our social media as a brand, a sponsorship tool, and an integration platform for our partners. But we also have a whole other sort of separate platform that we call NBA Playmakers, which is an influencer network. So we, just because of the broad appeal of our game and our athletes, we have the ability to partner with other influencers and other verticals. So we have sort of a fashion vertical that happen to have fashion influencers who happen to be NBA fans, and then a music vertical where we have music influencers who happen to be NBA fans. And we might partner, bring in a fashion influencer with a player and go shopping. We did a campaign with Dick's Sporting Goods where we might take them to go shopping and look for their latest Nike gear or whatever at Dick's Sporting Goods, and then we'll create that piece of branded content and share that across our social channels. So we're using, I guess, all of those levers as sort of brand integration and sponsorship opportunities for partners.
we take a look at which one of our platforms we're talking about. Like, is it Flip, or is it our core cup or blended yogurt, or is it something that we're doing with multi-serve and recipes? So depending on which platform it is, it will depend on which, whether we're on Facebook or if we're on Instagram. It just really varies by the platform.
So a lot of the content has gone from photos to video, or moving pictures or sound. Are you noticing that trend is beneficial for you, or are you still really driving the photo-based marketing?
All video.
All video. I think the trend is really helpful for us. Like, we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we got on stage, that like the yogurt category in this country is really kind of interesting. On a pounds per consumer basis, Americans eat less yogurt than the rest of the world. And in the rest of the world, they're consuming yogurt as a base in recipes. So the best way to educate consumers on that is by actually showing them video and how to do it. Most of the time you think about it just as a replacement for salted cream or for mayonnaise or something, but you can use it in pound cake and Thanksgiving dressing and different. We have recipes that we make every single day in our test kitchen. So the best way to get that out there and share that is through video.
For us, it's really a combination. Stills really perform very well for us because we get to highlight the jewelry pieces, and so on Instagram we can do a beautiful carousel of jewelry, and on Facebook as well, and it really will resonate with our audiences because they can stop, they can look, they can then click through and find exactly what they were looking at. Whereas when you do a video, there's so many pieces it can often get lost. But through stories on Instagram and then through video on Facebook, we are still able to leverage video just a different way, whereas like an awareness content kind of piece.
All right, well, how do you see your marketing strategies evolving as these trends just keep on changing?
I think for us, digital, being smart about our digital, being smart about the way we use mobile, understanding that consumer habits are changing to where they're not just consuming content on mobile, they're also shopping on mobile. And so making it as easy as possible for them to move around on their small screens and view your content or view what we're doing and our storytelling, which is an important thing, on these small, tiny screens. And so how we do that, how we do that well, that's really going to be the focus in the
I mean, for us, we're looking. It's probably pretty safe to say that we're going to test on any screen that's developed. We've spent a lot of time in the VR space. We're in our third season where we produce a live VR game a week. I think we're actually doing more than that by now. So like, we're giving fans the experience to watch a game courtside in virtual reality live, which is a pretty unique experience. Or we're developing augmented reality. We were the first U.S. sports league to develop an augmented reality game, like a Pop-A-Shot game. So I mean, I think it's sort of endless when we think about what we're going to be doing with technology and all the screens. And what we can do to complement the live game, because like I said earlier, we do really value that 2.5 hours that fans give us every night when they watch the game. So we want to make sure that we're giving them any added piece of information to make that experience more engaging and more meaningful for them.
I think for us, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is to make certain that our consumers can move from browsing to buying whenever they want to and wherever they are. I mean, even if you think about watching an NBA basketball game, chances are the TV's on, you're sitting there with either your laptop or your iPad in your lap, and your phone is sitting on the arm of the couch, right? So there's an opportunity to be influencing that consumer in multiple different ways. And I just want to make certain that I can help close that purchase funnel as quickly as I can and get my item from just being on my webpage to being in a cart.
All right, thanks guys. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we open it up to the audience for questions?
We have a question or two, and if you'd again just state your name and who you're with. Thank you. Hi, my name is Mike McGrath. I work with NBC Sports. This question is for Julie Morris. How often do you work with your broadcast partners to push TuneIn on your social channels? And how do you measure the conversion rate to driving ratings points for ESPN or the other broadcast?
Constantly. We do have a whole marketing division, which I'm not a part of, but we do use our social media and all of our channels to drive TuneIn for our broadcast partners. How we're measuring that, I actually am not entirely sure of what the measurement vehicle is, but I think it's probably working because ratings have been up for the past couple of years, so that's good.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Allison Benalia with Technology PR. Curious with all of you, what tools you're using for listening, posting, engagement, and measurement, and are they different or are they single platform?
So ideally they'd all be in one single platform, but as we know, there isn't one solution that fits all your needs, especially if you maybe don't really want to invest a lot of money as you're figuring it out. There's a list. We used Sprout for a while. That worked really well. We're kind of looking at different partners now. We really rely on our media agency to help us with a lot of the elements. But it's a constant evolving thing because, as you know, I'm sure, there's just so many different ways to measure and listen and what's accurate and what's not, and are you really getting the information that you want? So I would say that if there's one solution for everything across the board, that would be the ideal world for us.
We don't really have one single tool either, that we're using a bunch of different mechanisms. I really want to be able to give you a clear direction. Just we're trying to evaluate what's the most effective for each platform. Same.
Another question?
Yes, hi Florina. I had a question regarding Swarovski. You mentioned that most of the content messaging or strategy is produced in Europe.
Yes.
Does that work for you to roll it out into the social media exactly one-to-one in the US?
So that's where the layers become really, really important. All of the content that will come from Europe will never fit completely with the North America, or especially the US consumer. So what we found over time is there's certain types of content we know ahead of time when we receive it will work. And then what we do is we find the missing holes or gaps and we figure out ways to fill it, especially when it comes to specific US holidays or specific things that are really relevant to US consumers. So it has to be layered on, it can't just be flat.
Another question?
Hi, this question is for any one of you. So I work with Dylan's Candy Bar on their social media content, and I have kind of a challenge between, and probably every brand has a similar challenge, giving kind of screen time to every pillar in the company. From, for example, for us, it's the stores, it's e-com, it's parties, and the cafe. And how do you kind of manage, I guess, all of those pillars in your editorial calendar? Some of them, may not get as many likes as, the picture of candy, the money shot that we know is always going to work. How do you divide between those pillars and, what you kind of need to give your consumers versus what they're just going to click like on?
So for us, we actually use Facebook to allow some separation between all the different pillars that we have, between our loose crystals, which is a trade division, and then our high-end atelier line versus the more consumer mass stuff. And through the different Facebook channels, we're actually able to share the events that are relevant for each event or occurrences to each different pillar. Now on Instagram, it's kind of a free-for-all, where you really have to just find a balance of what makes sense in the moment, because you want to still talk from one brand voice. We haven't evolved to the point where it actually makes sense to have different Instagram platforms for each of our different verticals.
Yeah, we really are basing our calendar and our prioritization based on what our innovation schedule is and our campaign calendar is, and focus our efforts behind that and line up that way. It's not to say that there aren't retailers, for example, where multi-serve might perform better than the flip. So if we're engaged with the retailer, then we kind of line up that way based on what's the natural fit for the retailer.
I mean, again, this is a little bit more of the marketing department's question on my end, but like, it really depends on what the message is, and there's a lot of, like, to your point, mouths to feed in the organization as far as being able to provide all the information for fans. So it kind of depends on what the message is. You know, if it's a tune-in type message, sometimes Twitter works really well for that because it's a lot more real time and there's not much sort of action we're asking the fan to do other than turn on the television. Versus if we're asking them to like watch a video that we did with NBA Cares and we want them to really engage with a piece of content, then we might use a different longer form sort of Facebook video or something like that. So it really just depends on what the objective of that department's sort of campaign is.
Another question?
Hi, this is for Michelle. So I was on the Chobani website, so I was really interested in how I could purchase online. And I know you talked a little bit about the attribution model being really difficult from web to then seeing if the person is going to Whole Foods and picking up your product. But could you maybe just begin to talk a little bit about how you're at least starting to crack that nut, since I know that's a challenge for a lot of marketers?
Well, it is a challenge for us, especially because we're a perishable item, right? So to engage in direct-to-consumer is very challenging for us. It's very costly to drop ship product to consumers and then make certain that you have product integrity when it shows up on their doorstep. So we're dependent mainly upon our retail partners to get product to our consumers. The challenging part is that most of the retailers right now in the e-commerce arena are not necessarily sharing a ton of data, right? So the challenge is to test and learn in places where we can get to an impression level that would warrant us doing some type of brand lift study through an IRI or an AC Nielsen or some other type of data source at Oracle. We've tested a bunch of different ways and partnered with our retail partners on our programs to go about it that way and get data, because otherwise it is really challenging. You can't really follow the consumer and measure them all the way through the purchase funnel. Yeah.
I think we might have time for one more question. We give our panelists and moderator a nice round of applause. Thank you so much for your insights. We're all going on a lunch break right now, and hope we'll see you after that. Thank you.